you're stuck in this job, you can't see your way out of it, and yet you're fed up with it, and you're waking up in the morning thinking, I've got to do this because this is how I pay the bills. I've no idea what other job I could do. And yet there's some voice screaming inside, I've had enough. There must be another way.
Hey guys, it's Matt Haycox here, and we are here for another lockdown podcast special. And today I've got with me certified coach, leadership development trainer, and mindfulness teacher, Tim Segaller. Now, Tim is also an author, and he helps leaders and teams reconnect with their natural energy, creativity, and inspiration, which all sounds, fantastic words for the things that we probably all need to get our heads into gear and keep us happy and positive during these corona times. So, Tim, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm looking forward to everything you've got to say.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. Great to be here. And yes, hearing that introduction, it's kind of like, wow, that's quite a billing, isn't it? Do I do all of that? I hope I do.
You can pay me later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I've given a headline introduction, but just to tell us a bit more about you. How it began. What brought you on your journey, and what gave you your knowledge to coach people today.
Sure. Yeah, so I've been doing this kind of work, coaching and training, mindfulness work for about 10 years. And I really got into this, life led me here, my own life experiences. I haven't had an entirely smooth journey through life without getting the violin out and all the rest of it. I had my own struggles at various points in my life, addictive tendencies, self-doubt, holding myself back and so on. And, I was sort of doing okay in various careers previously, and PR jobs, communications jobs, but it was never quite right. And at certain times things just sort of caught up with me, and I almost through necessity at first had to go on a journey of self-discovery and, sorting my shit out, if you pardon the expression. So
you're allowed to swear on here, don't worry.
Oh, good.
Mum's not watching.
That's the worst it'll get, I promise. So yeah, I sort of went into therapy, got into mindfulness practice myself, and I kind of realized, it's possible to feel at peace with oneself, or at least more at peace than I'd been used to. And so, a bit like I often quote the phrase from that guy who founded the Remington shaver, that he loved the shaver so much that he bought the company. So in a way, I got so much from personal development work and mindfulness work that I thought, this is the sort of work I want to do with people. And so, retrained in that field. And I've never looked back really. And I guess, the key thing that characterizes my work is helping people to unlock those inner resources for creativity, for well-being, and for overcoming patterns from the past that may be holding them back. So there we go.
But it's interesting what you say as well, insofar as that when this introduction started, you were saying, well, everything didn't start smoothly for me, and I don't want to get the violins out, etc. But you almost said it in an apologetic way, but I actually feel that those kind of backstories, for someone in your position, or for anyone in any position, qualifies you much better than anyone reading a textbook, really, because you've really been there and felt it and know it. I mean, I'm obviously from a completely different space, but I have a similar backstory in that my journey in business was from, let's say, my early 20s to my late 20s, got hyper growth, super success, making a lot of money, and then a spectacular fall from grace with a mega bankruptcy. I was disqualified as a director. I was personally bankrupt, my businesses were bankrupt, and I started from scratch again to rebuild. And I've effectively, I wouldn't say I'm in the coaching space, but but I do advise other businesses. I provide funding and advice and support. And now and again, I'll have some haters out there, a couple of particular members of the press who like to give me a good grilling, and their usual speech bubble is around the fact of who is this guy, what an idiot that an ex-bankrupt thinks he's qualified to give advice to struggling businesses. Right. My argument is the complete opposite, in that who is better qualified than me for someone who's been through the shit and hopefully come out of the other side, live to tell a tale, learn from my mistakes. And I think for people like me, for people like yourself, I'd much rather be taking my advice in a space. If my head was gone, if I wasn't happy with my situation, I'd much rather someone like yourself who physically been there was there to talk to me about it than someone who's just read about what these feelings might be like in a textbook.
I couldn't agree more, and thanks for that sort of encouragement to I will get the violin out now. No, I won't. But yeah, absolutely. I've actually noticed, it's interesting, we're all on a journey, whatever the hell that means, but I have noticed more recently in my work, it's an evolving thing, that I trust bringing in more of that experience. Because I think when I started out, there was a sort of feeling of, well, either people don't want to know about that backstory, or somehow it will detract from my work because I should be showing up as this, completely sorted, totally confident, whatever, the sort of the ideal coach, as it were. But I've realized in more recent years that it doesn't really work, or rather it only starts to work once you allow aspects of your true self, whatever that means, to show up. And so I have taken the risk more and more in my work of, disclosing the fact that it hasn't been a smooth journey. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's a fine line also, though, because, when people come to work with me, what they need to feel confident in the process that I'm going to lead them through. And if I'm sort of too much going into that backstory, that can detract from it. So it's always a fine balance. I'm sure you've discovered that as well.
No, for sure. So, and now if we put this into specific context, then I mean, obviously, without naming clients, but yeah, can you tell us about, when would somebody need you? What specific situations do you help with? Are there any nameless stories you can tell us? So that we can kind of appreciate the context of how you work.
Sure. Yeah, so the company that I founded is a social enterprise called Rising Minds. And so we work in a number of different spaces. As a social enterprise, we run some programs in organizations with leaders and teams, and that's essentially around resilience, using mindfulness and coaching programs and techniques. And then we also run programs on behalf of charitable organizations in the community, so working with people who wouldn't otherwise access this kind of stuff, people generally on a low income, people who are recovering or coming back from difficult circumstances, difficult experiences. So it's a real spectrum. So maybe to give you an example from both of those, working with, let's say, a leadership team, so sometimes with individuals, sometimes with teams, what I'm seeking to do there, and what I hope people who've experienced working with me would testify to, is helping them to create more of a sense of mental space to deal with the complex challenges of life at work. Because the reality for so many people in management and leadership positions is that it's just non-stop activity and a sense of for so many people, of overwhelm and, like, the hamster wheel, running to stand still. And of course, I can't change all the elements of that reality for them, but what I can change is some very simple and yet fundamental practices in terms of how they manage themselves and their working days, and to create more space for engaging the wise parts of their brain. So this is where the neuroscience of mindfulness comes in. And so, yeah, I teach them simple techniques from mindfulness so that they feel more of that sense of creative control, as far as that's possible, given the reality of what is being expected of them. And then if I'm doing one-to-one coaching work, we'll sort of take that deeper to find out how they can apply certain techniques, what they might be doing to block themselves from being as creative and thoughtful in their leadership and management work. So it's really creating that sense of freedom and control through accessing their wisdom and creativity. So then on the other end of the spectrum, if you like, when I'm working with people in the community, very different context. And yet it's the same principles that are applying, really, because people who, without exaggerating it, who have nothing or don't have much and maybe are recovering from really difficult circumstances, ironically, they may have the same internal experience of feeling overwhelmed by the barriers that they perceive are facing them from getting into the world of work or training or whatever it might be. And again, I'm helping them to access that sense of inner space, inner creativity, to think things through. And of course, maybe in that field, accessing more of a sense of self-confidence, because maybe that's not so much what's happening when I'm working with leaders and teams, although you'd be surprised. So in a way, it all comes down to the same thing, and that is working with the grain of the brain to access your natural sense of creative control in your life.
Oh, and when would someone be aware or might think that they need your help? When would someone think, you know what, I have a problem here? Tim's the guy to call.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say it's when people, ideally, I like working with people before they reach crisis, because once you're really into a crisis, of complete burnout, let's say, then in some ways it may be that, other things need to happen first. But of course, in reality, sometimes people only do reach that stage of looking for help once they are in crisis. Sure. So I would say the early warning signs, that it means it's good to reach out for help with someone like me, is where your sleep starting to be affected because you can't put things down and you're constantly thinking about work challenges, where your relationships are starting to suffer, relationships both at work and then when that starts to spill over into home life, where you start to feel like that there are no choices, and you're stuck in this job, you can't see your way out of it, and yet you're fed up with it, and you're waking up in the morning thinking, I've got to do this because this is how I pay the bills. I've no idea what other job I could do. There are people looking to me, particularly if you're in a leadership role, so I've just got to keep going. And yet there's some voice screaming inside, I've had enough. There must be another way. So I would say that they're the signs, and the sooner you can listen to those voices, then the better that is, because it's easier then for someone like me to come in and, as it were, turn the tide.
Now, and obviously, we're recording this on the 29th of April, so we're very much in the middle of being locked at home. People working from home for the first time, suffering a lot of unknown, or rather certainly never occurred before, stresses in their lives. Are you Are you seeing a particular increase in work now, or are you seeing a different kind of client? And what can our listeners and viewers who are watching this, I mean, what kind of things can they be doing at home, to hopefully not need your services, or to keep themselves in a better state, in between using people like yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so it is a fascinating period for people in my industry, if you like. Yeah, there is definitely, or there has been a huge amount of anxiety and overwhelm out there. As we're sort of, 4 or 5 weeks into our lockdown, I have noticed things have settled down a bit, but initially there was, I could tell in my interactions with people, with clients, and colleagues and friends, that there was that initial panic. I think we're over the worst of that. Yeah, certainly the stuff that I've been doing, I felt moved to initially just offer some stuff, as many coaches and trainers were doing, as an act of service. So I was putting together some free stuff, initially helping people to adapt to working from home. So I was doing some webinars, and I put a course on for that. And there are some resources on my website around that. There's a free course on working from home. There's also some resources on using the wisdom of mindfulness to apply to these times, which is essentially about just taking time out throughout your day to allow your brain to reset. It's like rebooting a computer. When there are too many programs open, it just gets hot and wants to, blow up. And our brains are the same, essentially. So yeah, I've been noticing that that's what has been needed at this time. Interestingly, unpredictably, it's actually been more in the social end of my social enterprise spectrum, where I've been called to put on bespoke training at the moment. I think the world of the public and private sectors are it's such an extraordinary time of transition. It's probably, I mean, I may be different, maybe different for other coaches. It's actually harder for private and public sectors to adapt as quickly as some charitable organizations, which is very ironic. And I think that, it's just going to take a little while for the world of organizations and businesses to get their head around all of this. There's so much uncertainty around. Yeah, it's just going to change the way that people like myself deliver stuff, what we're delivering, and yeah, watch this space, really.
So presumably you're delivering a lot of your work now over Zoom calls, Skype calls, etc. And was that not the case before? I mean, did you do a lot of remote work before anyway, or has this been a new kind of string to your delivery bow?
Yeah, I was doing quite a lot on Zoom. Quite a lot of coaching does happen on Zoom. I've been running Zoom courses for a while anyway, because it's just such a great medium to reach people across the world. So I felt quite well adjusted to all of that. But yeah, inevitably I'm doing an awful lot more. And I love Zoom. I think it's fantastic. Or I love the virtual world. And yeah, I've also noticed that myself and people do miss something about what happens when you get bodies in a space. So without getting too new agey about whatever that is, but energies. But yeah, whilst we're still in this period, thank the Lord for Zoom and Skype.
100%. Well, listen, Tim, it's been great listening to you, and I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure many people listening to this now are going to be needy of your services, or certainly can benefit from them anyway. Never mind just now, but in general. I mean, where can we find you? Give yourself a little plug for socials and websites, etc.
Sure. Thank you. Yes. So risingminds.org.uk. That's our social enterprise. You'll see all our services there, and as I said, yeah, there's a resources section there where we've packed in a whole lot of, during this period, free stuff to help people to manage their own mind. So yeah, risingminds.org.uk, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. Listen, Tim, thanks a lot, buddy, and I'm sure it'll be great to catch up with you again in the future, and have this conversation again in a different kind of context, in hopefully a more positive time, and and probably talk about some learnings and experiences too.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Tim. See you soon.